good afternoon, everyone. And first of all, let me welcome you all to SAIT. And this is our PCL construction atrium of the Thomas Riley building. So thanks for joining us today for what I believe is a very important announcement from the Alberta government. So with that, I'd like to welcome Advanced Education Minister Demetrios Nicolaides and Associate Minister of Status of Women Whitney Isaac with us this afternoon, and Rachel Timmermans, Chair of the Council of Alberta University Students. But before we begin, I'd like to acknowledge that SAIT is situated on the traditional territories of the Blackfoot Confederacy. The city of Calgary encompasses a region that the Blackfoot tribes of southern Alberta described as Mohkinstsis, meaning elbow, in reference to its location at the confluence of the Bow and Elbow rivers. Since time immemorial, this region was a traditional gathering place for the tribes of the Blackfoot Confederacy. Today, the area encompasses the Indigenous people of the Treaty 7 region in southern Alberta, the Siksika, the Piikani, the Kainai, the Tsuut'ina, the Stoney Nakoda First Nations, and the Northwest Métis Homeland Region 3. With that, and this time, I'd invite Minister Nicolaides to the podium to say a few words. Minister?
Excellent. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Ross. It's great to see you, but also, more importantly, great to be here on campus and seeing many of our students participating in many of the excellent programs here at SAIT. And thank you as well to Rachel from CAUSE, and still with Sam, the Mount Royal Student Association. I always get it backwards because you have the Student Association in the acronym first, and of course, Associate Minister Isaac. Thank you all for being here. In 2019, shortly after being appointed minister, I had the honor and privilege of meeting student leaders from across the province. It was important to me to get a better understanding of the issues that are facing students today. And one of those meetings was with the SAIT Students Association. And in that meeting, I was told that more action was needed to address sexual violence on campuses. For example, I learned in that meeting that in some instances, there are no clear timelines for investigations into allegations of sexual assault, and that there can often be wide differences in policies from one institution to the next. And so after that initial meeting, it was clear to me that more work needed to be done to ensure all students are safe on campus. And so, in partnership with our student leaders, Alberta's government got to work. In January of 2020, I invited the Council of Alberta University Students and the Alberta Students Executive Council to a roundtable discussion with the then Minister of Culture, Multiculturalism, and Status of Women to discuss how we could proceed together. I want to thank the Council of Alberta University Students as well for their very informative white paper that they produced and their advocacy on this important topic. Regrettably, the onset of COVID-19 delayed much of our work as attention shifted to responding to the pandemic and combating the virus. But the need to make progress on addressing sexual violence was not forgotten, and policy work continued in the background. In April of 2021, I released a new 10-year strategic plan for Alberta's post-secondary system. We called it Alberta 2030, Building Skills for Jobs, which, as the title suggests, was focused on strengthening our post-secondary system so that students complete their education with the skills, knowledge, and competencies they need to succeed in their careers. The plan outlined the need to take action in 6 key priority areas. The first priority of the plan was to, quote, improve access and strengthen the student experience. Going to post-secondary is meant to be an exciting and fun experience with new opportunities, the chance to further your education and build meaningful, lifelong relationships. However, it is deeply disturbing to know that some students' experiences on campus include sexual violence. This is not acceptable. Sexual violence can leave lifelong scars, impacting survivors' physical, emotional, spiritual, and mental well-being for years to come. The damage has a ripple effect that impacts everyone in their community. And I'm here today because students deserve to be protected and have the support that they need. Ideas on how to improve the student experience were formed by those who know the needs of students the most, students themselves. As a direct result of their advocacy, the need to take action to combat sexual violence on our campuses made its way into the Alberta 2030 report. And we specifically mentioned in the report that, quote, that we need to, quote, modernize the existing provincial framework to address sexual violence in Alberta's campus communities. And that is precisely why we are here today, to take tangible steps forward in implementing Alberta 2030 and to respond directly to student requests. As we take these next steps, I am confident that we can support survivors of sexual violence and create safer communities across the province. So here are the steps that we are taking today. Firstly, I have asked all post-secondary institutions to revisit and revise their sexual violence policies to ensure that they employ best practices. As part of this request, we've included a checklist to assist our institutions in ensuring their policies are survivor-driven and emphasize support for survivors. More specifically, I'm asking for institutions to include in their policies, as some examples, protection from face-to-face encounters during the complaint process, survivor-centric interim measures, anonymous and third-party complaint options, the existence of clear timelines, and required sexual violence support and sensitivity training for all those involved in the complaint process. Secondly, the ministry is also working very closely with the Associate Minister for the Status of Women and our post-secondary institutions to develop and implement a new province-wide survey. This survey will collect important data to get a better understanding of the state of sexual violence and harassment in our post-secondary communities, including feelings of safety and feedback on areas for improvement. To ensure the questions are assessing the issue appropriately and correctly, the data can be collected over many years with consistency for analysis. We hope to be able to send out the survey this coming fall and share the results by the end of 2022-23. And lastly, Alberta's government will provide $2.5 million in new funding to achieve the goals outlined above. Each post-secondary institution will be allocated a portion of these funds based on their number of students, diversity of programs, and other variables. The funding will be used for a number of reasons, including to assist our institutions in undertaking the research and consultation that's required to update their policies, to provide necessary support to bolster training and awareness programs, and lastly, to develop and administer the survey that I just talked about. Again, by taking these steps, I am confident that we can support survivors of sexual violence and create safer campus communities across our province. In closing, I want to thank many of the student leaders, including some of them here today, who have made this issue a priority for me and for Alberta's government. In particular, I'd like to thank Rachel Timmermans, thank you for being here, and as well thank Emmanuel Barker and Ryan Mordstead from the SAIT Student Association for their advocacy. You have all told us that addressing this issue is critically important, and I can assure you it's just as important to us. It is important survivors know they are not alone, that they are heard, and that we are responding. So again, to our post-secondary students across the province, you have told us this is important, and we have heard you, and we are taking action. Thank you again, and I'd now like to invite my colleague, the Associate Minister for Status of Women, Minister Isaac, to say a few remarks. Thank you.
Good afternoon. It's a pleasure to be here today to speak about this important topic and to announce this funding today. And I want to also thank the students who have really advocated for quite a long time, actually, to have us take some action, some meaningful action. I want to in particular talk about CAUSE and their white paper. It was very well done, and I think it's been an important part of this conversation. You know, we know that for students, school becomes really central to their lives. It's key at this stage in their lives. They study together, have lunch together, and hopefully more of that soon. And they attend activities on and off campus together. School is very central to post-secondary students' lives, and as such, they need to be able to feel safe as they study and plan for their futures. When you're safe and comfortable, that's when you do your best work. And that's why this $2.5 million investment from Alberta's government is so important. Each institution is different, and they need to be able to work directly with students to develop sexual violence policies and initiatives that work for their campus. In Canada, the majority of people who experience sexual assault on campus are women. In 2019, 1 in 10 women students in Canada experienced a sexual assault in a post-secondary setting during the previous year. That's unacceptable. Though we don't have the data specific to Alberta, this funding is going to change that. It will be used to develop and deliver a province-wide survey on sexual violence on campus, and this survey will help us hear directly from students to learn about sexual violence and, importantly, the culture that leads to it. Our government is committed to supporting all survivors of sexual assault and shifting to a culture that prevents violence from happening in the first place. Placing a greater focus on and investing in preventing sexual violence is key to making that change. Creating that culture shift in addressing campus sexual violence is the only way to face this issue head on. And that's that culture that needs to change, and we must address it. And that's why we need to listen to students and fully understand what they're facing on a day-to-day basis. And it's important to support Albertans where they stand, as they stand up and call out for change and to call out for an end to sexual violence, because it's no easy task. It's about working together and putting sexual violence in the past in Alberta. And I'm really proud to be part of this work. It's time to act. For too long, we've been having the same conversations. We've been having many of these same conversations since I was a student leader at the University of Calgary. It's time to change that now. So I want to thank everyone who's been involved, all the post-secondary students, student organizations, certainly Minister Nicolaides and his department, our administrations across all the post-secondary institutions, everyone who's advocated so passionately and worked tirelessly to address this issue. And I'm eager to continue collaborating with our student leaders and with Minister Nicolaides. He was also a former student leader. And we will have a great partnership in the community with our post-secondary institutions. And I just, again, like to thank everyone, and also to invite Dr. Ross to return to the podium.
Thank you very much for the announcement and I believe what is so critically important, especially at this time. So as co-chair of the Skills for Job Task Force, I can also share with you that I'm pleased to see the government continue to implement recommendations put forward by the task force and provide what I think is some further support, important support, with this funding to encourage change throughout the post-secondary institutions across the province. So to echo the comments from Minister and Associate Minister, improving access and the student experience is not only paramount, it is critical. Now, SAIT's 2020-2025 strategic plan, New World, New Thinking, is, I believe, also in line with today's announcement. Importantly, our commitment to excellence, our pillar which focuses on people, on culture, and on growth, and specifically our equity, diversity, and inclusion strategy to build a supportive community for all students and employees. SAIT and all post-secondary institutions, I believe they play a vital role in preventing and responding to sexual violence. All members of the community are responsible to ensure the safety and security of our students. We talk a lot about student success, readying our students to be valuable contributors to industry, to the economy, to society. This success goes beyond the student learning experience, or for our employees providing the tools to grow and thrive. It's about creating a culture where everyone in our community is both safe and secure, not only physically, but mentally as well. So, removing the stigma around reporting sexual violence, feeling safe reporting incidents, and secure, and that you will be believed. Along with our policy on sexual assault and violence, SAIT's created a sexual assault and sexual violence prevention and response team. It's a cross-functional group which includes SAIT leaders, the Student Association, and members of our Equity, Diversity, and Inclusiveness team. Their mandate is to provide information and guidance to SAIT on matters of sexual assault and sexual violence prevention that affects the SAIT community, including students, employees, and visitors to our campuses. And recently, in late January, our EDI group helped align SAIT with the provincial Moments Matter campaign. We're proud to have joined Moments Matters, which engages Albertans in creating a positive workplace that can help stop sexual harassment. It's a 3-year province-wide campaign led by the Association of Alberta Sexual Assault Services that takes a unique approach to workplace sexual harassment awareness and prevention. But we all still have work rather to do, and we're committed to doing more. Through this funding, we can continue to grow the resources to help those in recovery from sexual violence and better respond to someone who discloses sexual violence experience. At this time, I would like to invite Rachel Timmermans to the podium to say a few words. Rachel?
Thank you very much. Hello, and my name is Rachel Timmermans. I am the chair of the Council of Alberta University Students and the Vice President External for the Students Association of Mount Royal University. Dating, domestic, and sexual violence is an unfortunate but ever-present reality on our post-secondary campuses. Most, if not all, students know a friend, a classmate, or even have their own story of an unhealthy relationship, sexual harassment, or even sexual assault. These stories are not the only ones that highlight the trauma these survivors must experience. I have seen time and time again that many students do not know how to report an incident, or if it is even worth reporting. Some are fearful of retaliation should they report, and it's generally difficult to understand how to get the proper protection and support. While some movements, such as the I Believe You and the Me Too movement, have advanced conversations in society, significantly more still needs to be done in prevention and education. Students in Alberta have been pushing this government for change, and we're happy to see the direction being announced today. Through the advocacy of ASEC, Alberta graduate students, and CAUSE, Ministers Nicolaides and Isaac have heard our calls to action by taking this crucial first step. Thank you. As this work progresses, I'm encouraged to see how the culture on our campuses can grow to become safer and more accepting for all students in Alberta. Thank you.
Thank you, Rachel. We certainly appreciate you and your efforts of the organization in continuing to make this a top priority. Again, thank you, Minister Nicolaides, Associate Minister Isaac, for choosing SAIT for this important announcement. I'm now going to turn it over to the Press Secretary to coordinate the question and answer, and have a good afternoon. Thank you.
Okay, this starts the Q&A portion of the press conference. Can you please put through the first caller, if there are any callers?
There are no callers at the moment. As a reminder, if you are online and have a question, please press *1 to queue.
Okay, going once, going twice.
Thank you. We do have people online now. The first question is from Jill Croteau, Global Calgary.
Yes, good afternoon. I was hoping to hear from Rachel or Liam, if he is there, just one of the student representatives, to just give us a sense of what you're hoping for in terms of some of the tangible things that are going to help survivors out of this announcement. Like, is there going to be, more campaigns, more signage to say, hey, it's safe to report, or, what kinds of things can help students who are navigating sexual violence?
Thank you for your question. I think it's a little bit difficult to answer that in the way it was framed, but I will add the way that I'm seeing this as a first step, kind of the issue that we've had with addressing this issue on our campuses is that every campus across Alberta has different support set up, has different systems set up, and many campuses have different definitions for what is going on these campuses. So it makes it really difficult to get a proper picture of how much this is impacting students across Alberta. And so the first step that we're taking is this survey so that we can understand what the landscape in Alberta looks like, whether, what services exist, what pathways exist. And then once we have that picture, we can begin to align it so that we can have, a standard set of definitions. This can help with data collection. So then we can start developing more effective strategies. I think too often we fall back on essentially social media campaigns. And I think what I'm most excited about this is that this is a first step that is not just a social media campaign. This is the first step to making sure that we have the tools we need to take the action to actually be protecting, supporting, and survivors and preventing this action from happening. I hope that answered your question.
And did you have a follow-up?
It does, thank you. I do. I was hoping that maybe you could articulate a little bit more about the barriers that some of these survivors are facing when it comes to reporting or being believed or not knowing what the threshold is, as you mentioned earlier, about when to report, what not to report.
I think it's a big question. There's a lot of barriers that exist, and I think they very much vary depending on who the person is. Somebody may have experienced a sexual assault or some sort of sexual harassment, but they might also have other anxieties that are contributing to the barriers of them bringing this forward. Some people may not know how to navigate the university governance system. They're different at most schools. While they do have a lot of similarities, it's not always clear where you go to file a complaint for this kind of thing. It's not always clear if there is somebody that you can go to. You don't know necessarily if you report an incident to a chair, for example. You don't know, could that come back on you in some way academically? And it's not necessarily that these are things that are guaranteed to happen, but often I find that there's so little information about how to do these things that it creates anxiety because it seems like supports that are already there don't exist because there's no information on how to access them. So there are many, many barriers, and it, I think, completely depends on what campus you're on, even what faculty you're in. But I think that at least by taking this first step of providing resources to our institutions and aligning the data collection on this, I think that we're going to start seeing a lot more meaningful change across our campuses in Alberta.
Thank you.
Okay. And operator, you can put through the next caller, please.
Thank you. Savannah Snow, Student Association.
Thank you so much. I was just wondering what sort of accountability measures will be in place to make sure that institutions are putting the full funding amount they receive towards reforming their campus sexual violence structures.
Sure, thank you for the question. So over the next few weeks, the ministry will be working with each of our post-secondary institutions, and we'll be sitting down to develop grant agreements. It's common practice within Alberta's government, anytime the government is looking at providing a grant or dispersing funds, that there is a grant agreement in place that includes elements of accountability measures. So we will be looking at that as next steps. A big part, though, of the grant in relation to some of the previous questions, will go towards the provincial survey that we'll be developing. So, of course, one of the key accountability metrics there is to actually see the survey developed and implemented. And as well, as I mentioned, another area in which the funds can be used is to support training programs and development of new training programs, sensitivity training programs for individuals involved in the complaint process, so that we, of course, can clearly track how many more sessions of training opportunities are available, how many people are engaged in those training opportunities. And from an awareness standpoint, as I mentioned earlier, some of the funds can be used to support awareness initiatives. So again, we can work with our post-secondary institutions to get a better understanding of how many additional awareness types of campaigns have been launched and have been enacted.
And Savannah,
Thank you, Mr. Nicolaides.
Savannah, did you have a follow-up question?
I did. Thank you so much. Will the government be including timelines in terms of when this needs to be turned around as part of the grant agreement?
Yeah, sorry, I didn't hear the entirety of the question. I know you mentioned, I did hear about timelines. So we do have timelines in place as it relates to the execution of the survey. So we are aiming to have grant agreements signed by the end of this fiscal year, which is March 31st. And then we also aim to have the survey up and running by this fall so that we can begin to collect data and more information, and then have those results available by the next fiscal year. Again, sorry I didn't hear the entirety of the question, but hope I captured it there.
Thank you.
Great. And operator, can you put through the next caller, please?
Thank you. Brittany Gervais, Calgary Herald.
Hi, thank you for taking my question. This is for the province or some of the representatives from state today. Wondering, in addition to improving supports for survivors here, I'm wondering how the funds or programs announced today could also be used to reduce the number of potential perpetrators as well. I'm wondering if that can either be done through consent education or by other means as well.
Sure. Well, maybe I'll make a quick comment, and then if Minister Isaac or others want to jump in. So there's three primary buckets that we're looking at with respect to using the funds, the $2.5 million. The first is in the bucket of awareness, to help build capacity for awareness of what sexual harassment, sexual violence looks like and how it can be combated. The second bucket is around training, to help ensure that individuals who are involved in receiving complaints of sexual harassment have the access to the appropriate training so that they can deal with these matters appropriately. And the third bucket primarily, there are four. The third relates to the development of the survey, and the funds will be used and directed towards the development of the new province-wide survey. And fourthly, post-secondary institutions can also use a portion of the funds to assist them in engage in additional research as they work on revisiting and refreshing their policies to ensure that they're following best practices. I don't know, Minister Isaac, if you wanted to supplement that.
Thanks. With respect to prevention and with respect to the culture that leads to sexual violence, it is important for us to all understand that part of what we're going to be doing here is leveraging the best practices that we have across campuses. And some of those include programs like Voice, which is a program that my department also funds, that is peer-to-peer conversation as well as mentoring for younger kids to really stem the sorts of behavior that lead to the culture of sexual violence. And it also leads to these kind of conversations actually lead to increased empathy. And we also know that if we, as we gather this survey information, we'll be able to understand what's going on various campuses to be able to leverage their best practices. So for instance, one campus may have incredible bystander training. So how can we leverage that to other campuses? And I think that sharing of information in a really concerted effort that deals with the culture and some of the skill sets that you need to build a culture free from sexual violence, I think will be very important outcomes for this program.
And Brittany,
Perfect,
did you have
thank you. I have a follow-up.
Yeah, what's your follow-up question?
Thank you. So this one is for either Liam or Rachel. Wondering if either more accessible education on consent or sexual health is something that either of you want to see improved at post-secondary institutions.
Sorry, I'm not sure if I heard the whole question, but what kind of prevention education we're looking for at our post-secondary institutions, I believe. And I think...
Yeah, I'm just wondering... Yeah.
Oh, sorry to interrupt you.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I'm just wondering if that's something that you would like to see improved as well, or if you want to see any action around more accessible education around prevention as well.
Oh, absolutely. And I think what's really hard about this announcement is that it's such a large file that, like, because this is just a first step, like, I know as a student in a post-secondary institution, I wish we could just wave a wand and make this all better. But I really see this as the first step of a long journey to addressing this issue on our campuses and even just across Alberta. And so I think Minister Isaac touched on this really well. So for example, what I might suggest happen at my home institution is I know that we have an amazing team that helps support our students, but I know that there is a big desire from our students to volunteer and be able to help out as observers, as supporters for fellow students. But we need some support in having someone who can facilitate that program, who can train these volunteers, who can provide them counseling after they themselves have had a hard conversation. And these are areas where we can start doing more prevention education by training more peer educators. This is something that I would want to see at my home institution. But as I said, this is a really big file. Part of this is that all of our institutions are very unique. We have unique mandates for a reason. We have unique student populations. And so I would almost be upset if we saw a one-size-fits-all solution, especially for education, because I think it really depends on the campus that you're bringing it to. And sorry, this is such a long answer, but yeah, I'm really looking forward to seeing how this funding can help take those steps to bringing prevention education. I know that this might not be the fix-all solution, but I think this is a really, really strong first step to getting us to the finish line. I hope that answers your question.
Okay, everyone, that was our last caller. So we are all wrapped up for today. Thank you so much.